It's a mean age. But it is going to be a beautiful future as long as we don't f*** it up. I'm Brian McWilliams, and this is Mean Age Daydream, where I bring you unfiltered comedy, criticism, philosophy, and politics with a Mean Age Daydream. What's happening, everybody? Welcome, boys and girls, ladies and gents, to Mean Age Daydream. I am your host, Brian McWilliams, and I'll be joined today by a very special guest. But before I bring him on, I wanted to tell you guys a couple quick updates we got over here. Number one is if you want to get in on the Q&A that we're going to be doing with Robbie the Fire Bernstein, come and join our Patreon, patreon.com/Lions of Liberty or lionsofliberty.locals.com. Going to be doing that next Tuesday, a Q&A for our $15 and up people where you can ask Robbie anything, literally anything you want. How deep is his anal cavity? It's all on the table, folks. So jump in there. Please support our show and have some fun doing it. Also be recording an episode with him. So there's that. Number two, I'm going to be doing a bonus segment with today's guest, talking about how you can go from concept to creation, getting things made, and how he did it. And that guest is the one and the only Matt Battaglia. Welcome to Mean Age Daydream, Matt.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Very excited to be here.
For sure, man. Well, I got an email about the new graphic novel you have, which is called House on Fire, and which I read it. I loved it. We'll talk about it in just a moment. But I was like, oh, this is great because obviously I saw you work for Free the People. I am lucky enough to consider Matt and Terry friends of mine. So I was like, oh, this is fantastic. Get Matt in here and you can talk a little bit about the book, the work you do with them. And by the way, I was off my tits hammered at Freedom Fest in Vegas. So I can't remember if you and I had met one night late at the Rum Bar or not. Did that happen?
It's entirely possible. I too was definitely not sober in Vegas.
Yeah.
So
okay. Yeah, because it was one of those things where it was like I met like four people that I know.
Was there a bathtub drink there or something?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes, we were there. I have no recollection of
Yeah, I have very, very small recollection of it at that point in time.
Freedom Fest was a month before my wife was due with our first, so I figured it was my last hurrah, basically.
Yeah, it was your dad's Chillerette party, as they say. What better place than Vegas to go? Well, so welcome to the show. We've got this, obviously a very timely book, which is House on Fire. There you go, graphic novel. I've got the PDF because as we talk here, I don't want to give any spoilers away because you want people to buy it, but I do want to show a little bit about the style of the book here. Actually, I'll bring up the PDF right now just so people can see it. And it's an interesting aspect of it because it's very, I'd say, raw in the way it's presented. And it's an interesting artistic take on it that I want to get into as well. But, it's very visceral. It's red and orange, or I'd say orange and black and white. It just gives a lot of emotion to a lot of the writing in there, seeing how, I guess, rough-hewn the sketches are. It makes you think that there's an urgency to it. It makes you think that it's very gritty, which, of course, it is. So tell me a little bit about how this book came into play. What made you think about it? How did your mind work around it? And how long did it take you to actually come up with the concept and get it on paper?
So I'll try to break that down. The first attempt at it, I did, I think, May 20th of 2020. So I drew like a page and it was called Delivery at the time. And the general story was different. It was set, it opened in a city rather than closing in a city. But so that was my first attempt. I drew a page and then I didn't know where to go with it, or like the story that I had come up with was too big and things kept happening in real life that kept making the thing that I was drawing feel too real, basically. Yeah, right. So later on that I think in July, I drove down to Texas with my dad from Philly to Texas, and the story that became House on Fire started to take shape in sketchbooks. My dad had bought a RV just before the pandemic, and so he obviously wasn't letting anyone else drive it. So in spite of my attempts to get behind the wheel of it. I was refused, so I sat with a sketchbook and basically wrote out notes that became House on Fire. I drew a few pages when I got back, and then I shelved it again because it kept being too close to what kept happening in reality, and I just wasn't ready to fully commit to it. So I think what year are we in? 2023 right now. So early 2022, I finally sat down. I figured out. I don't remember what the spark was, but I had finally figured out the end, the end point for me, which was changing the beginning around, and focusing a lot more on just establishing him and his wife at the beginning. And I think drawing that scene, I drew like 3 pages of that scene, and I ended up redrawing those pages, but that clicked it all for me, because the outline of events didn't change too much from that second draft. But I simplified it. The original version was way more of an action kind of film. Mm-hmm. And there was going to be all these huge shootouts and stuff, and I stripped all that stuff out because it I think it kind of it took away from the emotion of what House on Fire became.
Yeah, and it's very, I mean, there is a lot of suspenseful buildup. You know, it's not a really text-heavy graphic novel. It's very much you feel as though you're in the character's mind as he's going through. And this is a story based around the pandemic, as you said, real to life, and basically a health fascist state. Elements of totalitarian control that we see, playing out with checkpoints, a very China-like system of entry when it comes to scanning where you're allowed to go and your vaccine status, and of course a denial of medical care, which happens in the book. And again, I don't want to give too much away here, but with the lead character having to obtain a denied medical substance that has been nationalized and rationed by the state, and having to go through quite a bit of violence to get there. Yes. It's a fair way of describing it.
Yeah, no, it is. And I think that the thing that I really wanted to do with it, and the reason why it's not super word heavy, and it's fun talking to people now about the book now that it's out and people have been reading it, is how much people are reading into it, because a lot of what you just said isn't explicitly told in dialogue. It's established in the images. And the fun thing with a graphic novel that's different from other art forms, like, writing a novel or making a movie or whatever, is that just even the way that you draw a picture can convey a certain amount of motion and mood and time and place to it. So I'm glad that you picked up on all that. It was a lot of fun drawing it, because I was able to work out all of this stuff on the page for myself.
Well, tell me a little bit more about the stylistic choice. Now, is the style that we find, and I'll bring up a photo so people on YouTube who are watching along can kind of see the style that's not going to, again, give away too much of what's happening. But tell me a little bit about your style. Is this something that you adopted for this? There you go. Oh, that's good. Okay, let me find that page. I'll pull up that one. So, is this something that you had adopted specifically for this novel, or was it something that you were looking through and just said, well, this is kind of like the way I like to draw in general, everything I do is in this vein? Was it inspired by some other artist that you had followed and you've been reading for quite some time?
So for me, it's how I draw. The other thing, though, that I made a conscious decision to ink it all with a brush, and I tried to do pages as quickly as possible to give it more of a like a tense feeling.
Yeah.
And just, so it's not super labored over. There's a lot of drawings that, looking back at it, these, though, I would, redraw them. They're not perfect per se, but I think that the look that I was going for was trying to capture, again, like that, like a mood and an emotion. So that way, when you're reading it, you should, hopefully the mark making, makes you feel something that you wouldn't get if it was a sort of a photoreal picture, if that makes sense. I think that a lot 100%. Yeah, like a lot of Western comics right now are chasing after like intense realism, and they're losing a lot of the cartooning and stylization. And I think that often that makes it feel stiff. I mean, it that's not always the case. There are plenty of artists who work in that style and they do an amazing job. But for what I want to do with House on Fire is I wanted people to have a visceral reaction, and so I thought that having an immediate sort of mark making would hopefully elicit that. Paul Pope, I have a print. Paul Pope print is a huge influence of mine. He's a And so I definitely have studied him a lot, and he draws with a brush heavy. He's got a heavy brush style, and if you haven't read his, I think every libertarian has at some point been given a copy of Paul Pope's Batman of Berlin comic, which is where
I haven't yet. What the hell?
Oh,
is
you
this?
Haven't? Batman rescues Ludwig von Mises from the Nazis.
No, wow. I've never even heard of this. How's this possible?
Never? Oh my god!
Wow,
I have a couple of originals from it over there, but you've never heard of that?
I gotta order.
I have to send that to you.
All right, yeah, please. Send me a link. I'll grab it.
If you rant for a minute, I'll just go grab it. Hold
on. Okay, all right, yeah, I got to see this. This is too crazy. But yeah, it's really what's interesting too about this is I think this book, it does evoke a very emotional reaction. And I was thinking about the way in which the world has gone. We're getting away a little bit from print editions of books. We're getting into an area where a lot of thought control is occurring. And I was wondering in the process of writing this, if it's almost, while it's not a direct take from our current time, it is an extension that is very close to reality. And that is almost a marker in time to say, look, we have to remember that this happened where it was, no matter what gets memory hold. It almost is, it reminded me of Fahrenheit 451 in a way, in what they're trying to do digitally, and how we may enter a time when having physical books actually might be vitally important to us as far as remembering what happened to us as a culture.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there, and to me that's why for me, I sent you a book. I sent you a physical copy.
I've got it right here.
Because I think that's how I intend for someone to read it like this. I don't think a PDF is actually the right way to read it. I think that you need to hold it and be able to put your nose in it. And I like you said with the digital stuff, like, if you just have something digitally, you have no idea what's going to happen with it, and you can edit culture. So one of the key reasons why I felt like I had to make House on Fire, and why I'm trying to promote it as much as I am, is because I hope it's part of a cultural record for COVID, and I don't think that there's enough of it. And I think that that's why we're seeing people be able to memory hole a lot of things that happened, and there's not a whole heck of a lot of things outside of tweets and blog articles that aren't really lasting things to remind people of what occurred here. Yeah. So I hope House on Fire is one of those things, kind of like you think about music, and there were so many records produced in the aftermath of 9/11, in the aftermath of the War on Terror, that were, and movies as well, but that were dealing with those things and grappling with what happened. And there just isn't, I haven't seen a lot of that out of COVID.
No, neither have I. And I think that's very intentional. It's almost reminds me of that article that was written, I can't remember if it was the Washington Post or where it might have been, some left-wing news outlet, but basically begging and saying, look, we got it wrong. It was written by a leftist saying, we got it wrong. We should just be forgiven. Can't we all move along? And I think that's what they intentionally are trying to do, is say, let's just move along. This was nobody's fault. It happened. It's a thing. Guys, why are you dwelling on it, right? And we can't permit that.
No, it's insane. And it's, I don't think that we should allow that to happen. And I'm sure there are people who would like that to happen, who maybe aren't culpable for something. They had bad takes in the moment. But there are a lot of people in positions of power who are not going to experience any ramifications for it, and are going to keep the keep the levers of power that they used in COVID open to themselves. So unless if we constantly remember what occurred, there's nothing to stop this from happening again. Right. And that worries me a lot.
Yeah. Well, how difficult was it? And we'll talk in the bonus segment a little bit more about the nuts and bolts of this for people who want to follow the path that you've blazed here. How difficult was it to get this made? Did you have to put a lot of your own money into it? How did you find partners to create it? Because there is not a lot of people out there, especially in the comic space, that are going to be open to something that is necessarily critical of COVID, the regime of what people, the leftist nation had aligned themselves with. So I'm curious to hear a little bit about that, how that came to fruition.
So, well, fortunately with comics, there's one name here who made the whole thing, and that's me. So I didn't need anyone else to help me. I could do the whole thing myself. It's the beauty of comics as opposed to other, like making a film. I work at Free the People, make a lot of documentaries. I have to work with other people. It's
terrible.
You need to do it. You need other people to make those things. So comics, all it cost me to make the thing was my time and ink and brushes and things like that, which on the scale of things is pretty cheap. As far as the publisher is concerned, I have a great publisher called Living the Line, and Sean, the publisher there, is a production whiz. I think it's why the book looks and feels as good as it does. And
it's a good hefty book, by the way. I mean, you can hurt somebody if you swing it at somebody's head. You can hurt them. It's got a sharp corners. It's really
it's got a nice. The paper's good stock and all that.
It's really lovely.
And Sean has he just wants to publish good books, and so we have the benefit of it. He's a small publisher, but you can take risks and you don't have to be afraid about what you're putting out necessarily. That's the other beauty of comics, is that it is a small enough of a space that while Marvel and DC weren't going to put a House on Fire out, but also I would never want them to put it out because then they'd own it. And why would I want them to own it? So because the scales are smaller, I think you can get away with more. I just don't think that there are a lot of people doing that. I mean, there's definitely a ton of people doing stuff on Kickstarter and Indiegogo and things like that. I don't see a lot of the way that I'm starting to think of House on Fire is it's a book for adults. It would be rated PG-13, and the reason would be, adult themes and one scene of violence or something like that. But I would like to see more of that. I think that a lot of people, we need to have more adult. I'm going to say adult entertainment, but obviously I don't mean pornography. I mean things that speak to adults in an emotional sense. And I think that's important. So,
well, we talk about the comic book industry as a whole. Like you said, there's Marvel, there's DC, there's kind of this entire culture war going on, I think, between the people who grew up with comics and which were very sexualized on both sides. The men were men and they were very muscly, and the women always had low cut tops. And now there's been this kind of revolution. And I think there's a comic writer who writes Cyberfrog. I think his name is Ethan Van Shire, if you're familiar with him. And he's pushing back against it, as are several other people. But where do you think things are going within that industry? Do you think that it's pushed past the Rubicon where everybody's just sick of this now and saying enough of this woke crap, enough trying to rein in what we enjoyed with comics? Let's get back to it being goofy with big tits and muscles. Or do you think that it's just gone too far and it has to come to independent publishers like you and some others?
Well, I think it's funny. I think the whole argument is kind of... It's kind of silly to me, because I think it's a fixation on superhero, legacy superhero characters who have been around for 60 plus years in a lot of these cases. And I think they're running on fumes as far as comics are concerned, because they've, how many Batman stories do you have?
Right.
So I'm happy that a lot of these people who criticize what Marvel and DC are doing as far as, whatever woke stuff or whatever, they're going out and making their own books. And I think that, again, comics is an easy medium to produce your own thing, and you can get it out there. You can market it and publish it. It's not it's not all that hard, honestly. And so I think it's better that people create alternatives than us fixate on trying to fix what is essentially a property owned by some mega corporation that like I don't care what Marvel and DC do with these characters. The books that I grew up reading, I still own those ones, the ones that matter to me. Like I kept those, and I have them in print. They're not going to change. They're not going to go anywhere. I as a 34-year-old with a child and different concerns, I'm not reading superhero books. I don't care anymore. And is my daughter going to read superhero books? I doubt it. She'll find something else that she likes, and there's plenty of options out there. And I have no desire to force her to read Marvel and DC because it's what I read growing up. Hopefully there's something better for her.
Better and new. I mean, that is definitely something that I think goes through all entertainment, be it comic books, be it film and TV, is this over-reliance on existing IP.
It's terrible.
And it's awful. Rebooting it, expanding it. And granted, I know that there's an allure to that. As you said, there's legacies. People like what they like, and they get stuck in their ways. But I think a lot of the criticism, as you said, does come from, giving Superman a gay son all of a sudden. And you go, hey, there you go. We're shoving it down your throat. So people get pissed about that. But at the same time,
I get that.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Or race switching characters, which annoys the living shit out of me personally, because the most valid criticism I have of it, though, is, as you said, they can do what they want. It's their property, but create new characters. This is what Black America is saying, at least the people I think that would agree with our philosophy, is don't give me an existing character. Don't give me a Black April O'Neil. Create a new character that has her own mythology that's in her own right interesting to me. Not just because you gave her black skin and she's an existing character that you think is going to get somebody to tune in.
Yeah, and I feel like, though, in some of these cases, there's a weird incentives problem with why they don't, like, if you create a new character at Marvel or DC, there's not really a lot of incentives for you, the creator, to do that, to give them a good new idea, because they'll make a movie or whatever they want to make with it, and you get a couple grand as recompense,
and you lose your control,
payback, and you don't have control, right?
Yeah.
So why would you do something new for them? And so I get that, but I also feel like that I just feel like they don't. I just don't think that they have new ideas to do with these characters, and so now they're stuck in this sort of inward-looking loop because they don't want to make up new villains, which is what would spice it up. They don't want to make up new heroes, and so you can't change the status quo too much, but you can change if you change the sexuality of a character, then it's well, we can add in a new relationship, and then we can toy with that for 20 issues or whatever, without having to make anything new of value, which, again, I am of the opinion that the sooner that these large legacy characters die off and become actual just legacies, or even honestly what would be great is if they just become public domain, the better off we are as a culture. I think that we've been too long. The fact that there is another Indiana Jones movie coming out, which I will probably go see because I am a sucker for Harrison Ford and Indiana Jones. It's not going to be good. But the fact that that we're seeing a fourth one and Harrison Ford is in his 80s, why? Just make something new at that point.
Yeah, exactly. We don't need Harrison Ford in Indiana Jones and the Mystery of the Replacement Hip. Which is not alluring. Although I have been told it's Shia LaBeouf, so that's good. No Shia LaBeouf in this one.
Yeah, but they'll put something else in that's worse, right?
Oh, so there's going to be, it's going to be like the Bond thing. I guarantee there's going to be the handoff character in this movie, without a doubt.
I have thoughts on James Bond, but I love Bond. That's the one where it's I think James Bond should go on forever.
I love it, and it's built in that they say different people could be 007. Fine, it's kind of like Doctor Who. Right?
Disagree.
No? All right. I mean,
immutable character.
Sean Connery is my favorite 007, but I can get that they're look, it's just a number assignment. Whatever. This is our world.
No. Sean Connery, George Lazenby, Timothy Dalton, Roger Moore, Pierce Brosnan, Daniel Craig, they're all the same guy.
All right. If you say so, and I am fine with that interpretation as well. But I'm trying to give them the ability to change it. But at least I get it. Yeah. To your point though about adding that different sex option, it really does open up. So I can see your point in that. This is the way to keep it fresh.
It's a soap opera.
I agree completely. But I think you make a really salient point, and I hadn't really thought about that before, is that the incentive structure completely doesn't exist for new characters to be brought into it. I mean, before, when you had Marvel, I mean, Stan Lee created half of those characers, and the other half.
I mean, or Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby did, but yes.
Well, I was gonna say, as well as some of these other creator founders, but the incentive was still there because it was a company getting off the ground. It wasn't this monolith company now, where as you said, you're going to lose any control. Right. And it doesn't make sense for you to just lump in that realm, unless it's kind of a character you want to throw away to do something else. I guess you could say you'll make your name and then leapfrog to something different. But if you're going to take your shot, typically you're probably going to use your strongest piece of IP to do it. So again, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot if you even make the attempt.
Precisely. Yeah. And that's why you've seen a lot of comics creators, they go to the big two and then they leave and they do their own creator-owned series. And they do and that's where they make their, and because you build your audience at the legacy, and then you go into your own thing. So yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of people worry about it, but I've made my peace with the fact that I'm not going to read superhero comics anymore, and I'm very okay with that. I have no qualms about it. I used to read The Punisher frequently, and Garth Ennis stopped writing it, basically, or they stopped putting out Garth Ennis Punisher stories, and I was like, great, I'm done. I do not need to collect anymore, and frankly, I've tried other ones, and none of them are even remotely as good, so I don't want more.
Yeah. And plus, they're too damn expensive.
That too.
Because I used to collect comics, I was like,
it's like $4 for a floppy, which is insane.
Beyond ridiculous. So
22 pages that doesn't even wrap up.
Right. Exactly. All right. So one more thing on the book, and then we'll do a little current events, topical stuff. One of which I think kind of ties in well with what we're discussing here with a little bit of race swap and art. But we're both fathers, right? We were talking a little bit before we came on properly. We're both fathers. How much of what's going on right now do you have in the back of your mind when you do write something like this that is a projectable future on what we're living right now, something that obviously is terrifying, but within the realm of reality to the point where it becomes a pretty grave concern, as we do have these young, I have 2 daughters I'm bringing into the world now. So where does that weigh in on what you're doing, and I guess the inspiration behind it? Did it set your ass on fire to write House on Fire?
When I purposely didn't include anything about like kids in the book because I didn't want to jinx anything for myself.
But you'll happily have your wife die from a medical ailment. Is that what you're telling me? You're willing to put her on the paper and jinx her? What a horrible person you are. Terrible husband.
She did get COVID. So.
Oh, there you go. This is all your fault.
But I did get jumped, so it's kind of even.
Oh God! Well,
yeah,
this is turning into a Tales from the Crypt episode or a Twilight Zone.
And I had written it before. I basically the finishing. I think I had finished like inking most of the pages. I don't know. The story was set by like pretty good in, but I think that having a child it's definitely going to inform everything I do from here on. I have a little afterword in the book that basically just says I hope that when she can read it, that a lot of the things in the book are going to feel more fictional again. I'm worried that that's not going to be true, but one can hope. The next book that I want to do is focused on our relationship with technology and social media and things like that, because that's the next thing that really worries me about having a kid is how do you protect them from all of that stuff, or how do you explain it? I mean, I was lucky enough to go through high school and up most of college without, I think I was a senior in college when like everyone started getting iPhones. And so I was fortunate to not have so much on record basically. And so what it's going to be like for a kid growing up today with all this stuff that scares me. And it worries me that it's a somewhat inescapable part of our culture now, it seems. So.
Yeah, I agree. I'm with you there. I'm struggling with that myself. And there's so much social contagion as far as things that challenge your kids, especially women. I've got 2 daughters, and I
have 1 daughter, so same page.
Exactly. It's coming at you, and you see, like on TikTok, for instance, these instances of people developing Tourette's syndrome, or at least emulating it because they saw influencers with Tourette's, and you go, "This is unbelievably fucked." Yeah. And the challenge then is, as you said, weighing: do I allow my daughter to have this tech and use it, or risk the potential of something bad happening to her in this way, of being, all these different issues that stem from it, depression and loneliness and, X, Y, and Z. Yeah. Or do I deny her that ability, making her ostensibly an outcast in the digital realm, inviting potential bullying in person rather than online, and then weighing the benefits and risk? And honestly, at this point, I think I'm pretty solidly on, I'd rather she get bullied in real life, and I think it's the less dangerous option. Honestly, seeing what's happening right now, I mean, it's so concerning to me. Unfortunately, I won't have to deal with it for another probably 7 years, but it's terrifying, man.
It is. I think that you can't deny the existence of it to your kid, because that creates a bigger problem, I think. So I guess you just gotta hope that you can explain it and give them tools to grapple with it, and to I think the thing to keep in mind for people is that your self-worth and value is not how many likes or followers you have online. Now, I am selling a book, so obviously the more followers I get would be great. If you want to,
and I will link to your I'll link to all of your Twitters and where people can buy the book on the show notes.
So it's not that we're hypocrites, but we know what it's knowing what the purpose of the thing is. And I worry, like a thing like a TikTok, which I am not on and I refuse to go on. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know what the purpose is. And I guess it's the same as everything else, where it's sort of self-promotional nonsense. But I don't know. It's terrifying. And I don't know how to deal with it.
Yeah, and there are many pitfalls. As you said, you and I didn't have a lot out there. Of course, now I do. People can end my career 50 times over, no problem. But there is that pitfall of, what stupid shit is she going to post on social media? What trend is she going to follow on TikTok that's now going to be findable, searchable, a digital record of everything stupid ever said and ever done?
Right. Can you imagine your college years recorded like they are today? I can't.
No.
And I wouldn't want, I mean, no one wants to be accountable for who they were at 20 when you're, closing in on 40. That's insane. Because if you're the same person, that's a different problem. But I feel like kids today are now going to be, there are so many parents who are putting stuff up of their kid as a toddler on the internet. Yeah. And it's
I hate that. I've got a couple. I share one picture every few months, maybe, of me and a kid. I have a private Instagram that's only for friends and family to follow. So don't put it out
because you do always have those relatives who are like, oh, I want a picture of the baby. Can I see a picture of the baby? Yeah. And then you don't feel like texting them constantly, because then you have to deal with answering text messages from them all the time. And so, you throw one up to appease people.
And it's convenient in that way, in that you say, okay, and especially my parents are in Florida, I'm in Los Angeles, so they don't get to see each other that often. So they can watch the kid grow up online. Great. But it's private. There's 30 people that have that link, and that's kept to myself, and we'll see. I'll just delete it eventually. But you don't want that public record out there. And I do think it's a perverse incentive that people have. You said the addiction to likes, even going beyond the younger generation into what's going on with millennials and Gen Z and all this other thing of, even that, it's just fodder. Having the child is fodder for their own ego, which I guess you could argue that having children is always an exercise in ego, because we want our genetic material to go out in the world and prosper. But still,
I guess so. I I don't know. I think it's also a selfless thing because they take up all your time. I mean, I would like to do another book. I don't know when I'm going to get a chance.
Story of my life, man. I'm working on a book right now, and I'm trying to find time to do any of it. Well, anyway, let's go to a different topic here. So we'll do some current event stuff.
Oh, wait, real quick.
Yeah.
This is you got to get this.
Oh,
one.
yeah.
This is the and I'll show you this.
The Batman where he rescues Ludwig von Mises.
Von Mises is written against Nazi policy, Herr Wayne. He's been very critical of our decisions.
I love it. All right, I
gotta get that. I'll send it.
I'll
send you a listing or whatever.
Yeah, please do. That's awesome. So this is a perfect segue because I wanted to talk about this story that CNN published. One of the most ridiculous things I personally have seen, and it was an article written by somebody named John Blake, analysis by John Blake, an article called "What's Digital Blackface and Why Is It Wrong When White People Use It?" Perfect segue since we're talking about the pitfalls of social media, and obviously now we have a new one to worry about, which is digital blackface. So my question to you is, as an artist, as a creator, do you feel that if somebody's on television, if they have something from a TV show, from a work of art, whatever it might be, even if they're black, should we be able to use this as white men and incorporate it into our own points, into our own art, into our own culture and lexicon? Or is it stealing digital blackface?
I feel like it's an easy one in that if you're I don't think that there should be a problem with it. I think that I don't know, all art or memes are just like sharing things, right? Like, so I can't use like memes with
no, that was what this guy's saying. You
there's
can't
that
use
one
memes.
meme.
You can't use that funny thing of the woman. It's like, ain't nobody got time for that. Not allowed to use that.
What about the meme where there's it's a funny, the kid, he's looking at his computer and he puts his hand down his pants in the second one. Circle.
It's like, or that,
it's a great reaction gif.
Yeah.
Meme.
Well, or you mentioned like
whatever.
These great news clips that are out there, right? You said your dad was. Are you from Philly, or is
I'm from North Jersey. I you know what? I've appropriated Philly culture because I've gone in the IGA that I used to live near. All of their announcements were in a Delco accent, so I kind of slip into it occasionally. But I'm a Giants fan in Eagles country. So
okay, well,
out here.
I'm an Eagles fan and now Rams and Chargers country, but I'm a Philly guy.
But at
originally.
least they're weak fans. They're not.
Oh, they're terrible fans. Yeah, it's easily taken over and bullied. But there's a great news segment you probably saw, which was that in Philly there was a black fireman, and happened to be in the middle of a season when Nelson Aguilar, who was our wide receiver, had dropped all these easy passes. And he's out there, he's going, well, we're catching babies, unlike Aguilar. And it's like one of the funniest things I've ever seen or heard in my life. It was amazing. Like, classic Philly. But it's a black man. Does that mean I can't share this meme, this hilarious meme?
No,
I can't
you
make
have
a joke around it? Right?
It's a classic meme.
It's absolutely classic. And it's just to convey a point. And, for me, it's like half the time these people, number one, it's either news clips or from television shows. Yeah. Or something that they put out there into the world intentionally to get likes, to get clicks, to get whatever it was. So you're creating this to be shared, number one. Or you are actively taking part in something is going to be out there for public consumption.
Yeah. So sharing the memes is just supporting the digital economy. I mean, what else does all of the social media run on if not memes?
Yeah. Well, and their argument that this guy is making in this piece, let me read this little bit, is basically arguing that we are using them, right? See, this is a quote in this article that is taken from an advocate. Oh, sorry, this is an essay for Teen Vogue from Lauren Michelle Jackson. Teen Vogue, which has become somehow a hot button for race and trans and whatever else. Teen Vogue.
Teen Vogue is known for astute takes on all things. So
it's
I think we should let's back off of this. Teen Vogue's on it. I don't want to talk about this anymore.
You don't want to get the Teen
Vogue.
They've
settled it already.
Yeah, they're done.
They're a powerful lobby.
Well, here's this quote. We are your sass, not your nonchalance, your fury, your delight, your annoyance, your happy dance, your diva, your shade, your yas moments. The weight of reaction, jiffing period rests on our shoulders. Now, that is very egomaniacal, by the way, to say that black people are the only ones used for this, and that there's not a million gifs of white people and Zach Galifianakis and anybody else doing stupid shit. But her point somehow that you should be denied emoting through these things. And essentially what you're doing is much like when you read a comic, when you read a graphic novel, you are finding something emotionally that you're connecting with, and you want to share that. You're taking part of that and you're putting it out in the world, and you're saying, look, this is how I feel, and I want to express this visually. Yeah. And that is what memes do, and that is what these GIFs do. And there's no fucking problem with that.
No, I feel like it's just people need to are constantly looking for stuff too, and we're in the trap. Like, this is, if we, let's step outside of ourselves. We're all trapped in this thing where we're finding aggressively more stupid things to be like, this is upset. I'm upset now that people are getting likes on stuff that they shouldn't be allowed to share. And it's like, we've already established that likes are meaningless. And so wait, the CNN guy, I mean, that's like he's on some sort of internet broke brain thing for even coming up with a take. Like, obviously there's just people whose brains are just melted by the internet, and I don't know what to do with them. Like, how are you supposed to, like, what kind of therapy do they need to, like, get off of the juice?
Well, it's like, the therapy is to, and I'm guilty because I'm talking about this stupid article, is to stop talking about it. Yeah, that's the thing. But we're hooked to the juice. But we're trapped. But it's kind of funny. We're talking about legacy superheroes, right? And now how the only thing they can do now is, slap a vagina on Superman or whatever it might be. This is the legacy superhero of the left. It's racism. Yeah, I mean, it is. This is the mighty legacy superhero. So this is the only option they have, is to come up with a new stupid thing to tie race into and be outraged over at any point. And I think this also ties in. Oh, go ahead.
We're just waiting for this to go public domain too, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. By the way, Mickey Mouse is going to be public domain, I think, next year.
Sweet.
Yeah, Disney's going to replace him because they got to own it.
Yeah.
So the last thing I want to add on this topic, and then we'll get into like one more thing, and then we'll go to the bonus show, is just that I found it so interesting in that I think partially also this argument that it's digital blackface to use these emotive GIFs or memes is based also in the less desire to control perception, and much of that is perception of Black people, right? Because there's this argument that we have to hold these people up on high on a pedestal, and white people are to blame for everything, and Black people are up here, and they've been crushed under the feet. So I think that it's also an effort to control perception, and a lot of what's being shared in these memes are the funnier moments, are goofier things. So if you're trying to control a perception of Black culture as downtrodden and victims and and everything the left paints them as, having all of these memes out there that people use that are probably actually doing a benefit or a service to the overall acceptance of Black culture and Black America, and just seeing them as everybody else that's out there, to try to control that is a tactic that they're using because it aids in this reshaping that they're trying to attempt. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know. I was also thinking too, though, that like, is it kind of they assume that people are laughing at rather than with, like, the whole.
Yeah,
I don't know.
For sure they do. Yeah, for sure.
It just comes from the super negative place because they're all miserable. Yeah. And I wish people would kind of take people a little bit more on good faith. I don't think that people sharing memes is done usually with malicious intent.
Yeah. No, I don't think so either.
What? So you can't watch the Chocolate Rain video again anymore?
Nope, off limits. Digital blackface.
Classic.
And that guy can argue. I mean, he was the whitest man in the world too.
I think he did pretty good. For Chocolate Rain. I dated myself with that one though, right? Like that was like early. That wasn't even a GIF, was it?
That was the start of the internet. Yeah, that was like one of the original
YouTube
videos.
Did not exist when that was out.
No, it did not. All right, last thing we'll talk about here is something that was pretty interesting. I was going to talk a little bit about the Israel situation, but we'll see what happens with that. It's just kind of Netanyahu, protest because he's trying to change the judicial system essentially to excuse himself and make it more difficult to replace him. But let's skip over that.
We don't want to get on the bad side of the IDF.
We can't get on the bad side of the IDF and AIPAC and Teen Vogue in one episode.
No, that's bad.
Instant destruction. But one thing we can talk about, which I thought was pretty fascinating, is that El Salvador has a bill that was put forward by the president, President Nayib Bukele. I'm sure I did not pronounce that correctly. Nailed it. He's putting forth a bill which essentially, and this is just me kind of summing it up, is going to eliminate capital gains taxes, profits taxes, all sorts of different incentives on anything technology related in El Salvador. Now, of course, El Salvador famously has adopted Bitcoin as well as its currency. So what do you think about this hard lean into what I would argue is the model that every nation should follow, especially if you're trying to encourage investment, technology, and the betterment of your society, would be to give incentives to people to create?
Yeah, I think that sounds great. I wonder what the asterisks are on it.
They own everything that you're creating in the city. Yeah,
right. Like what, obviously there's definitely some catch because it is the government. So you certainly can't trust it.
I mean,
I thought that there's some. Isn't there some debate over like the Bitcoin situation down there because it's government accepted, so therefore it's not bad or it's not good? I mean, or something.
To be honest, I have to look into, and I need to do more homework on this. I haven't really done a big episode on it, on how well it's going. Number one, and what the effects of having Bitcoin used there as a currency would be. Now, I mean, considering the inflation that's going on everywhere else, having Bitcoin in there, even though there's ups and downs, probably isn't a terrible idea. But because of that fluctuation that can happen with big sell-offs, if you're using that in your everyday purchasing power going in and out as a society, it's a little tricky. Yeah. Because it's literally can be a day-to-day fluctuation of 20%, and you're like, okay, well, eggs are 20% more expensive today. Okay, shit.
Well, that's not different than what we're living with, but
well, true.
I wonder though. I guess the question is their government regulating like all of these industries in any sort of way, like especially with Bitcoin? I know that I wouldn't want the U.S. government making Bitcoin our money, because then the government is going to regulate it, and they just end up using Bitcoin to track you more than they already are, and et cetera, et cetera. It'd be bad. So I wonder,
and arguably the Federal Reserve could influence the price of Bitcoin just by going on exchanges and buying a shit ton of it or selling a shit ton of it. Yeah.
So I don't know. It sounds great on paper, like the headline. It's a great headline.
Yeah.
But I just, I guess with everything, anytime there's a government involved, you got to take a very healthy, large dose of skepticism.
I would agree, but I do like it. I think from the perspective simply of the fact that they're introducing it. Because it's something that I've advocated for, when you talk about special economic zones, and actually on Monday's show, which we're recording on Monday, but they don't need to know that until I told them. John Odermatt talked to a guy named Alex Voss, who's working with, and I'm blanking on the name of the actual foundation, but it's in the show notes, but essentially to create private cities. Okay. And, with these special economic zones, and Rand Paul's talked about different special economic zones before and how they've been put into place in cities. I like that it's actually getting into the context of conversation, though, as an option to say no taxes on an industry. Now, is it still playing favorites? Yes, because obviously you're pushing up tech over other industries. So is it fair? No, but it comes down to at least somebody's getting the break, and I'm happy if anybody gets the fucking break, and at least now it's getting out there where other governments can consider this. And I will need to look into the bill once it's put forth, once somebody translates it, because obviously I don't speak Spanish fluently, and find out what those catches are. Because I'm sure you're right. I'm sure it's something where it's a limited time period. I'm sure it's not in perpetuity.
Right.
I'm sure you have a 5-year period, and then maybe they tax you on your past revenues. That wouldn't shock me if that was in there, So, we'll
I mean, in Philly, they were doing they were waiving property taxes for, I don't know, new development, I believe. And I think it has different effects where, I mean, they've overdeveloped a lot of sections of Philly, and they've got they're putting up huge apartment buildings everywhere. And it's, they actually had to demolish one, which is actually one of the locations in here, is the power plant that he goes to. That's now condos.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Is it going to be like China cities? They're good at demolishing ghost cities now?
It's like,
empty buildings that nobody's in them.
I just feel like that's gonna happen. But I don't know. I do always worry when government picks their winners and losers through these incentive structures, like how that goes. We've seen it with a lot of green energy companies in the U.S. where it's all super corrupt, and those companies don't end up doing well, and a lot of them go under, and it's a slush fund, yada yada yada.
Yeah.
So, but I understand if you're El Salvador and you're trying to get tech investment, that makes a lot of sense. And didn't Tim Scott do something with the economic zone somewhere too? Do I remember that correctly?
Did. I can't remember where. I mean, they've tried it in a few different places, and it's been successful where they've tried it. But it's nowhere near to the extent that El Salvador's proposed. There's a more bold proposal. But again, we'll have to see what the actual bill says.
But I guess the size of El Salvador is not, you wouldn't necessarily do it nationally in the U.S., but you do it on a state-by-state basis. And isn't that the kind of the beauty of federalism, is that people can do different things and try things out?
Supposed to be. I'm sure that without a doubt, it's like, I swear if some state tried to do this, they would be attacked on some level by the federal government for breaking some sort of regulation.
I'm doing this bullshit optimism thing, which is just...
I try to too, man. I'm trying. All right. Well, I'll tell you what, even though we're talking optimism, you guys should check out House on Fire. It is not an optimistic look at our future, but it is a very, very good read. I think you guys are going to love it. It's beautifully drawn, beautifully paced. And I think that without a doubt, as we talked about earlier, it is something that has to be done. We need more of these cultural milestones that are going to exist. They're going to document what we've gone through and warn people as to the future. So, Matt, thank you for coming on, man. Any last thoughts about the book, about the future, about life, your favorite recipe, whatever you want to add?
Well, thank you so much for having me on. People can buy the book. It's on Amazon. It's in Barnes & Noble. You can order it on Target online if you also are buying a lot of diapers at Target. So you can also go to my website, mattjbat.com, and that has links. Check out my work at freethepeople.org. Favorite recipe, I do a great meatball. That's my... People clamor for that.
That's literally what I'm making for dinner tonight. I shit you not. Fantastic. I also do a great meatball. I'm making meatballs for the family. That's as soon as we're done here, I got to roll them and get them in the oil. Awesome. Well, guys, Matt Battaglia, check it out. House on Fire. We're going to do a little bonus segment here talking about the creative process of getting this all done and made. So join us on Patreon if you are able. Otherwise, Matt, thank you so much for joining me on Mean Age Daydream, buddy.
Thank you.
All right. From Matt, I want to wish you all a very good day, a wonderful goodbye from the Lions Liberty Network, and a reminder to keep those electric eyes on me, babe, and keep that ray gun to my head.